Okay, book of Mark, chapter 6, up to this point. Now, what can we say about some of the things Jesus has had to deal with? What's been the impact, for example, of the scribes and the Pharisees? What's been their response to watching Jesus? Trying their best to get rid of him, aren't they? They're jealous of him in one respect because he's attracting what? Huge crowds pressing on him. So they don't want that. They don't like his message. But a lot of people today don't like the message, do they? And they're fighting hard against it, just like we've been saying. So he's got the crowds pressing on him. He's got the scribes and Pharisees who are supposed to know the word, but they can't seem to put it together, can they? Even though the evidence is right in front of their face. They see the miracles. What's he done? Well, he's healed disease. He's healed lepers. He's healed the blind, the sick, raised the dead even. Calmed the storms. He's got the authority and power over nature. He's got it over disease. He's got it over death. He's demonstrating all of that. But yet, they don't believe what they see. They don't want to hear what they hear. And yes. And then the family. What's the response of his family members? Yeah, they came up to him on the one event we read, and they think he's out of his mind. He's acting in a deviant way. They don't understand it. So he's got that to deal with. So can you imagine the day in and day out, constant pressure, constant demands, constantly wanting something from him? So in chapter 6, and I'm going to try to compare some of the parallel accounts a little bit too. He went from there and came to his own country. What's his own country? He's been on the other side of the sea. He's been kind of back and forth. So, that's even a different one. Yeah.
Well, I've got the one you've got, but that'll help. I'm pulling another one up.
Is everything on there?
Give me a moment and I'll have the other one up too. Sorry,
So if you have these still, you see that his hometown, what's his hometown? Nazareth. So he's going back to there. His disciples are with him. And on the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue. Well, now, how do you get the right to teach in the synagogue? This is his hometown. Who gives the authority for somebody to do that?
there you go.
Yeah. Okay, who gives the authority for somebody to teach?
That's right, one of the priests of the area.
Well, one of the synagogue elders, there's a group of elders that preside over a synagogue, a local synagogue, and out of that group of elders, somebody's chosen to be the actual presider or ruler, and that ruler takes care of the order of worship, who's going to speak, what are they going to read, that kind of thing. So somehow, he's recognized well enough to be invited to speak in his hometown synagogue. And many who heard him are what? And they're listening to him. They're amazed. This is like a really strong word. They're like baffled, numbstruck. Wow, how can this be? Because what do they know about him? Yeah, we watched this guy grow up. We know his family, right? What did his dad do? Joseph? Carpenter. And the word there means not necessarily just woodwork, but can also be stonework as well. So he could have done some of both, building and helping his dad do all kinds. There's a tradition that says he and his dad may have worked at this little town of Sepphoris. You see it just above Nazareth there on the map. or on the map you're holding, you may not be able to see it up there. There's a town of Sepphoris. Yeah, you can maybe see that. It's just above Nazareth, right up here. And it's very possible that he and his dad would walk over to that town and work on, and Becky and I got the chance to visit that site and work on this theater that you can still see today, this pretty good sized theater. It's very possible that they worked on that while Jesus was growing up and helping his dad. So they know his background. And carpenters were not, I would say, well thought of, because they'd have to travel a lot, be away from home, and that kind of thing. So he's teaching in the synagogue. They are astonished at this because they know him. Where did he get all this? What is the wisdom given to him? How did he get this wisdom? He's just a carpenter's son. What mighty works are wrought by his hands. In other words, they've heard at least about the miracles. Okay? This is not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James and Jones and Judas and Simon. They're listed here. And sisters. So he's got a pretty good sized family. And they took what? They're offended. Wait a minute. They know he's worked miracles. They say that they believe that his message is full of wisdom. They're kind of amazed at that, but they're offended. Why would they be offended? Why would... The word we get here for offended is it's the word used for, like, to scandalize, to set a trap for.
But don't you think that they're probably just thinking about the other people and how they, other people are going to look at them, too, this family?
Yeah, that's going to be part of it. Certainly the family or extended family are, we don't know if we want him out there in the public eye.
I always wondered if they were a little bit jealous, seeing him raise the dead, heal the sick, do all these things that they couldn't do.
Mm-hmm. There could be a factor of that involved as well. But be that as it may, they were offended. And then Jesus says this little proverb, a prophet is not without honor, except in his own country and among his own kin and in his own house. What's the phrase? Familiarity breeds contempt. I mean, they know him. It's like, is it one of the hardest things to do to witness to family members? Because, why? Well, they know you really well. And it's hard for them to accept, your message sometimes. And, it just seems to be a factor. So, here he quotes this proverb that, you're not, you came like a prophet, didn't he? He came like a prophet. He's going to be rejected like a prophet. But how did the people receive the prophets of the Old Testament? Were they welcome? Oh, what happened to some of them? Well, let's see. Jeremiah was thrown in a cistern in a mud pit and arrested. And Isaiah was ridiculed. Ezekiel, all of them. Had suffered some kind of rejection. Moses, of course, was really rejected, wasn't he? So all of this is going on, and they don't like what he's saying and what he's doing. So he couldn't do really any mighty works there, could he? In fact, that's what we were told. He couldn't do anything mighty there because of their unbelief. At the end of verse 5, after he says that little proverb, he could do no powerful work. That word in the Greek we get our word dynamite from. He couldn't do any mighty works there, except that he did lay hands on a few sick people and heal them. Now, that may have been before he taught in the synagogue, and they took offense at him, but whatever the case, he couldn't do a lot there. And then we have this statement, verse 6, that he marveled because of their what? Their unbelief, their lack of faith. That's one of the 2 times in Scripture we're told that he was amazed at something. The other time is he was amazed at someone's faith. You remember that? The centurion? He was amazed that this guy said, hey, you don't have to come to my house. And he marveled that this Gentile centurion would have that kind of faith when the people in Israel, and especially the leaders in Israel, wouldn't accept it. So he amazed on the one hand of somebody's faith, and he amazed on the other hand of people who should have at their unbelief. And now we're told that he's going to send his disciples out. And he went out among the villages teaching. Mark really is emphasizing this a lot in his gospel, that Jesus is primarily concerned with teaching about the kingdom of God, supported by miracles, but he's teaching. And he's bringing in the truth of all of the Old Testament record that spoke of him and that is leading up to this event. And he called to him the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2. So they're going to do the same thing Jesus has been doing. He's going to empower them to preach, to teach about the kingdom, and to work miracles. One of the main miracles is going to be casting out demons. But why is he sending them out 2 by 2? Couldn't they cover more ground if they just went out individually?
Support each other, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Support.
Yeah, support.
Well, witnessing each other too.
There's something about having someone with you, isn't there?
Yes.
That's comforting, it's encouraging, supporting, and accountability. All of those factors are part of why there's a need to send 2. The Old Testament talks about the need for 2 witnesses, doesn't it, for anything to happen. And when you're dealing with an event that's happened and somebody needs a witness, like the car accident, it's always better to have more than one, isn't it? Right? But support, you know, as I wonder about that, I talked about that with some of my other minister friends a long time ago too, but you know, in ministry, that to me, that says a lot. A lot of times we send some of these young college graduates from a Bible college, for example, into a ministry, and they're suddenly out there, thrust out there all alone. I think that's wrong. I think there's a tremendous need for there to be someone alongside them. Whether they're in the church they're going to or not, they need a supporting person. Let me tell you, it can be demanding. And sometimes you feel like you're out there all alone. And you're wondering, now, who's going to stand with me in some of these things that we're dealing with? And I think we've done an injustice a lot of times by thrusting a lot of these, especially younger guys, out onto the field of serving as a pastor or missionary. And nowadays, most times missionaries don't go out alone, do they? They go as a team. And that's what we need. We need a team. And I have seen and heard about so many ministers who have had to leave or did leave the ministry because they felt isolated, alone, and they just got discouraged. And it shouldn't have to be that way. So there's significance in having 2. Now you say, well, where's that going to come from? Well, it needs to be decided. If that young man comes into the church, then you better have somebody ready to be at his side, supporting him from day one. Whether that's an elder or a paid person or whatever, they should be there from day one to be supportive. So I've said my piece on that. But I'm saying that from experience. From a lot of years of seeing what can happen when that doesn't happen. So he's sending them out 2 by 2 for very good reasons. And gave them authority over, specifically saying here, unclean spirits, over demons. Now, why would that be so? I'm going to share a thought I think is probably why you find in the gospel so much demonic activity. Because Satan at this point knows who he's dealing with. He knows that this one promised way back in Genesis is now here. He doesn't know the plan, but he knows the person, right? Because he He attacked him directly in the wilderness, didn't he? If you really are, let's find out. And so he's constantly on him. I believe the storm we read about on the Sea of Galilee that he had to rebuke, same word he uses against demons, was something Satan's throwing out there. Kill off these disciples. Get rid of him. He wants to get rid of him. He's filled with anger. He's the king of murder, of deceit, of lies, and so he's going to do everything he can to try to discredit Jesus, and that's why you see this constant pressure. So Jesus knows that this is really critical times, that he's active. He's throwing everything he can at this work, and so he's giving his disciples authority over the demons, and then he gives them a charge to not take anything for their journey, Mark says, except a staff. Now, that's a little different from Matthew and Luke, who actually, Matthew says no staff, but there's just a little bit of nuanced difference in what Matthew and Luke say compared to Mark. Not a lot. But then Mark says no bread, no bag, no money for your purses. Well, gee, come on. How are we going to make this? What does it sound like?
Sounds to me like he's asking them to walk by faith.
Yeah. This is going to be a step of faith, isn't it?
Yes.
You're going to have to trust me. You're going to have to trust God to be your provider. Does that not take us back to the wilderness? Huh? What did Moses say to the people? Well, they brought stuff with them from Egypt, but they didn't have any food, didn't have any water. And yeah, we had it better off in Egypt. We're going to die out here in the wilderness. And yet, they had seen all the power of God at work. What's the deal? What do we do? We've seen his power too. Don't we sometimes do the same thing? Will you trust me? Don't take all this extra stuff.
That's why you hear a lot of people that go on the missionary field, they leave everything at home and just go. They don't take any of their possessions, they just go and or sell it all and then go. And it's like, don't think I could just leave my clothes or take some stuff, but I mean, you don't take cell phones or you just have their kind of money, but
It's a big step, isn't it?
it's a big step to leave everything behind and go out and with
You-
nothing but,
Because you're going to have to adjust to that culture and to those people. And you can't take all the, quote, American stuff if you're going to have a good witness, can you?
Reminds us, if anybody's ever read the book called The Hidden Valley.
Mm-hmm. Moore's family. Right. I know Ron and Patricia real well. Yeah,
They did that.
they did. Changed that whole area completely. Not just spiritually, but physically. I mean, they raised the level of their living in that whole area. That's what the gospel does. So he says to them, don't take all this extra stuff, but wear sandals and don't put on 2 tunics. What, you take an extra tunic? Come on. I mean, that's not
I
fair.
think something, but yeah, but
Yeah. And then he says, when you enter the house, stay there until you leave the place. And if any place will not receive you and refuse to hear you, when you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet for a testimony against them. In other words, you've given them the news, you've given them opportunity, they don't want it, they reject it, then you move on. Okay?
That's what it's hard.
That's hard. Really hard when a family member just don't want to hear, right? Or a neighbor or a friend that you've tried to reach out to. And they don't want the message. They don't want the news. It's tough. Shaking off the dust is kind of an idiom that was used back in that day, that, okay, if you don't want to be around, you don't want to hear the message, then it's kind of a symbolic way of saying, okay, we're moving on. But now, Matthew says not to take sandals. He does say don't take 2 tunics. Don't take gold or silver or copper. He kind of elaborates on a few things. But aside from those few little differences, basically the message is the same. Don't take a lot of extra stuff. Trust God on this journey that I'm giving you. I'm giving you authority, so you will do what I'm doing. Okay? You're going to do exactly what I'm doing, and you're going to promote the message of the kingdom. Well, I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Speak for the kingdom, for the Lord that we seem to love. But too often, we're not as active, aggressive, maybe, as we should be. What does Luke 10:1 say? Somebody have that? And Jesus' point in all that is saying, you know, when he says to stay with somebody and be happy with what you receive, you think he's saying, look, you may be tempted to compare that you may get better lodging or better food at this other place, but if this is where God's put you, be content with that. Because we are often tempted to compare, aren't we? You say, I could do better than that. You know? Man, look at these people down the street, they got a lot better house. You know? A lot better accommodation, but no, he doesn't say that. He says, don't do that kind of thing. Just be content. Now, what does Luke 10 say?
After this, the Lord appointed 72 others, and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go.
So now we have, in Luke's account there, not just 12, but 72 text reads, okay? They're going to be sent out. So he's got a pretty good group of people, followers at this point, that are going to go out with the message. We are to go out with the message, aren't we? We know that. It's not always easy to do. But they're to go by faith. Not easy to do that either. We like to have everything figured out, don't we? I do a lot of
Later
times.
on, that he sent them like lambs going into wolves.
Yeah.
That's
You're going into the battlefield. And spiritually, we really are, aren't we? Again, if you dare to speak up for what God's truth is, well, you're going to get attacked. You're going to get put down. People don't want to hear that. Not today as much as they used to. It's even intensifying, isn't it? So now we have a sandwich message here in between him sending them out and them coming back. Because in verse 30 of Mark 6, we're going to have them coming back, and they need to spend time with Jesus after they've done all this mission work. But Mark chooses to put another little account in the middle of this. And this is about John the Baptist. So verse 14 says, when King Herod heard of it, heard of what? Heard of what all Jesus has been doing. This has not been done in secret, was it? You got crowds of people talking about this all over the place. For Jesus' name had become known. And so what's the response? Well, he must be John the Baptist come back, right? Got to be him. Why would they say that? If
About what he did kind of the same thing. You know,
he had a powerful ministry, he didn't have any, we're not recording any miracles by him.
But he had a message.
He had a powerful message. He was very blunt about that. Repent. Show the works of repentance. And the scribes and Pharisees were examining him too. But why do they think it's John the Baptist come back? Because sometimes there was this superstitious belief that a well-known person, a prophet or someone, their spirit could come back in somebody else. I know that may sound strange, but that was a pretty common belief. So John, this must be John the Baptist raised from the dead. Because apparently, according to Mark, we're assuming that he's already been killed at this point. That is why these powers are at work. But others said, no, why would they say Elijah? What happened to Elijah? Anything unique about Elijah? What was that?
People was just taken up.
He was. How was he taken up? You remember? Chariot? Description of a chariot of fire. Remember Elisha's there watching this? And all of a sudden, he's gone. So there was this belief that what might happen? Elijah's going to come back. So maybe this is him. Maybe he's come back now. Because he didn't really die.
He did some miracles too.
He did some miracles, very similar. Yeah. Very similar things that we'll see here a little bit. And others said, no, it's maybe one of the other prophets. But it must be some prophet of old. That spirit must have returned and it's working through this man. But when Herod heard about that, he said, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. He was convinced it was that. Well, because he had him put to death. He was hounded by that, wasn't he? Haunted by it. He didn't really want to put John to death, did he? Kind of like Pilate. Pilate didn't really want to put Jesus to death, but he did. And so did Herod kill John the Baptist, for he had sent and seized John. Now we get some details about what happened then. And which Herod is this? No, it's not Herod the Great. Who is it? Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas, ruling over this territory of Galilee, Judea for at least a time. Now, he's not been given the title king officially. They kind of recognize him as a king. So you're going to hear him referred to as king. Mark does. But Matthew and Luke call him tetrarch, meaning a ruler over an area. Okay? But he's seen as a king by the people, acting kind of like that, but really he's a tetrarch. So he seized John. That's a powerful, strong word. He bound him. We've looked at that word bind and bound. Satan is the strong man who Jesus is binding. But John is being bound. These are the same things that's going to happen to Jesus. He too is going to be seized and he's going to be bound. He's put in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Now what's going on here? What has Herod Antipas done? Do you know anything about the history? We talked about, well, it's been a long time ago, I guess. What's the history behind Herod Antipas and Herodias? Herodias was the wife of Herod Philip, who ruled the territory north of Galilee, kind of ruled the territory over on the east side of Galilee, Perea, some of that area, and he was given rule over that area. Herodias was his wife, but Herod Antipas wanted to marry Herodias, but he's already married to the daughter of King Aretas of the Perean area. So he wants to get rid of her, so what's he got to do? He's got to divorce her. And what he does is he gets rid of her and sends her back home to Dad. How do you think Dad's going to react to that? Not good. There's going to end up being a war, and King Aretas is going to assemble an army and come down and just really crush Herod Antipas. And ultimately that's not going to be good for him because Rome's going to not like that, and he's going to end up being gone. But for now, he ends up getting Herodias as his wife through this little deal that he's worked out, getting rid of his wife. So he's now married to her. And John had said to Herod, hey, this isn't lawful. What's he talking about? The law does not allow you to just get rid of your wife and take somebody else's wife. That's against not only Jewish law, but even the Roman law and stuff would not really be happy with that. But anyway, you have taken her, and Herodias had a grudge. Well, yeah. And she wanted to kill him. What are we talking about there? People don't like to hear that kind of stuff, do they? Leave me alone. I want to do what I want. I'm happy, so quit it. Just don't say anything. Let it be. But Herod feared John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man. I mean, they know the guy's character. When he heard him, he was much perplexed. The word is, I don't know how to take this message. I hear it, I know there's truth, but man, I don't want to change my mind. Is that the case a lot of times today? I hear what you're saying, but I'm not kind of happy with what I'm doing. I don't think I want to change. And that's kind of like, you remember Paul before Herod Agrippa? He did invite Paul in to hear it. He thought that was kind of neat, but did he change anything? No, didn't want to change. But he heard him gladly. It's so weird. You want to hear this guy because you know there's something really special about him. And this message is really, I like the message, but don't change anything. So he's perplexed about it, but he was glad to hear it. But an opportunity came when Herod on his birthday, so we'll go through some, we'll finish this up next time, but he's got a birthday banquet going on, and he's got all these officials in there from Galilee. Now we've got Herodias' daughter, Josephus says it's selfish.
Right.
And she's dancing, and it pleased him. The word pleased there has sexual overtones. This was a probably pretty erotic thing. She's probably a very young teenager, maybe at least marriageable age, which would have been 12, 13. So she's a very young girl, but she's been instigated to do this by her mom, no less. Way to go, Mom. You really care about your daughter there, don't you? And this was really not... males, they would not normally allow this to happen like that, but he does because what have they been doing for a while? Drinking. Do they care? No. It's a wild party. And so they're all out of sorts. They don't know what's going on. And she does the dance, and he says, oh, you really like that. Just go ahead and ask me whatever. And he's drunk. So he didn't know what he's saying, but he's saying it in front of all these officials. So what's he got to do? Now he's got to save face. So something's got to be carried out. And whatever you ask me, I will give you, even up to half my kingdom. Wow, you're really drunk. And so she went out and said to her mom, now we've got it done. What are we going to do? And she said, well, let's get rid of John. And she came in immediately with haste. In other words, we've got to do this right now. Because if he had more time to think about it, he probably would have never done it. If he'd sobered up a bit, he probably wouldn't have done it. But he's drunk in stupor. He's seen this wild dance. He's just caught up in all that. And she says, well, we want to take the head of John the Baptist. And she came in and said, I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist. Don't wait any longer. Give it to me now. And the king was sorry. Many people can be sorry, but they don't have any qualms about what they've done. You know, maybe sorry we got caught, sorry this happened, but no real repentance of heart. But because of his oaths and his guess, that was more important to him than the life of a man who he knew to be holy and righteous. That was more important to him than saving this man's life. He'd rather impress his guests and be honorable to them than save a man's life. We got people today who would rather be true to their cause of abortion, killing innocent babies, than they would saving the life of that child that's in that mother's womb. What's the difference? Well, because of his oath and his guess, he didn't want to break his word to them, and so he sent the soldier and gave orders to bring his head, and he was beheaded. The head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she gave it to Mom, and when the disciples heard of it, they came and took his body and they laid it in a tomb. And John gave his life for his Lord. And many times it happens that way, doesn't it? We don't know the whys or the hows. We say, well, why did some get spared and others didn't? The book of Acts, James and Peter were both arrested by King Herod. But what happened? James got beheaded, James got killed, Peter got released. You say, well, Why did one get spared and the other one not? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Do you? Who's got an answer to all that? God knows how it's all gonna work, doesn't he? All right, we'll pick it up there from next time. Thank you.